Counsel, you asked for an in-chambers meeting.
Yeah, Judge, there's been, since the start of the trial, and we're prepared to offer sworn testimony on this from two different witnesses. There's been nonverbal communication between one of the jurors, who's a female, and Mr. Bellar. The communication has been in the form of eye contact, smiling at each other. Today, a little after 2:30 p.m., when we were at sidebar with the court, this was occurring again. And in fact, Mr. Bellar had a physical response. He clenched both his fists and shook them in an affirmative way, spoke to Mr. Morrison immediately afterwards. And we're very concerned about this juror. We are. And this has been, and again, this is something that actually one of the two witnesses that were prepared to tender would testify that this was actually occurring on the first day of trial and has been occurring during the trial too. So I raised this in the chambers, very concerned about it. And we bring this to the court's attention.
Your Honor, just so the court's aware, the shaking of the fist is because of skills. There was a sidebar. I was talking to your clerk. I was asking for some candy. She said, does your client want some Skittles? Because guess what? It's his birthday today. And oh, by the way, happy birthday. And she knew it was his birthday. And so she said, you want to give these Skittles to your client? She handed me the Skittles because I wasn't a part of the sidebar, because the sidebar had to deal with a witness that I could give 2 cares about. And I showed Mr. Bellar the Skittles from right over here in the corner. The camera will show all this. And Mr. Bellar said, you got me some Skittles. That's what that's about, Your Honor. Now listen, I'm an officer of the court. I'm not going to try to say things on the record that aren't true. I have noticed her kind of looking at her. I had a conversation with my client regarding it. That's how I get proactive on things. I kind of saw it and I told him, he knows he's not supposed to be they haven't spoken outside of this. He's not winking at her. He's not doing anything to her to encourage her to, if she's got an issue, she's got an issue. But I don't think that's a basis to get rid of this juror. I just don't. And what they're classifying this is ridiculous. I mean, but again, I will not deny also that there's been a couple times she's walking, she looks at him, but I can't say what that's about. I can't say it's maybe she likes him, maybe she doesn't like him, maybe she's this, maybe she's that. There's no way of telling what's in the juror's mind and what exactly she's doing or thinking. And I haven't watched her 24/7, and I only see her when she comes in. I focus on witnesses in the court. I don't peek over at the jurors very often unless it's closing or something. But I could tell the court it was Skittles.
And Your Honor, I would just like to say that, number one, I find some of the things that have been said here totally unappropriate. This is a juror that both sides agreed upon. She is supposed to judge the witnesses and judge the defendants. She's got to look over here. I've had rape case and child molestation case where jurors have looked at my client in the testimony and shook his head, nobody complained. For people to suggest that simply because a young woman who's been tasked with the duty of evaluating somebody's guilt or innocence and is looking over here, it must be some sort of flirtatious or romantic involvement, is just sexist. She is supposed to look over here, judge the evidence, and judge these people. She's doing what exactly she's supposed to be doing. And this is one of the problems I've had with this case, from its inception. Again, looking at people and trying to interpret what's in their head. There's not even been an allegation that she's had contact with anybody on the defense side. There's not an accusation that anybody from the defense side has had contact with her. She is supposed to evaluate the testimony. People have laughed during this trial. They've smiled during this trial. They've, said good morning. There's all kind of stuff that happens in a jury trial that is now in its 7th day. Mm-hmm. I mean, I completely object to the court even addressing the juror. I definitely object to the court removing the juror, Your Honor. It's just trial. It's what's supposed to happen. She's supposed to look over here and judge these people.
And the other thing too, Your Honor, is we have no idea what her background is. We have no idea what her emotional level is. We have no idea who she is. And what I mean by the looks that I'm talking about is this right here. That's what I observe. I do not observe. Yeah, and I agree with what Kareem said. We get jurors over here shaking their head like disgusted or angry or whatever. I can't just go, whoa, you don't like my client because you look angry. You don't like my client because you're shaking your head no when I'm trying to ask you a question or talk to you. Judge, can we get rid of those two?
Isolated instances when that happens. I've seen that happen many times in the last 16 years sitting up here. Mr. Ballard, what have you got to say?
Just, Your Honor, I agree with brother counsels on this in its entirety. And I think to take sworn testimony on this is egregious, right? And then to say, well, we can't query her because she's somehow gonna lie, right? Where's the basis for saying she's gonna lie? Because she's a woman, because she's young, because what's the basis? She sat here, and I agree 1,000% with Mr. Johnson. She went through voir dire. She answered the questions. She has made no anything that tells me she's not paying attention. I've not seen it, and I sit directly across from her. And I'm sitting here, and in fact, in order to watch the witness, I see her, and I see her sitting there, and I see her share the same facial expressions as the rest. Sometimes there's a smile, sometimes there's a grimace, sometimes there's an absolute bored look. And I share that with all 15 of them, right? They all will make these faces. You can look at any one of them. And again, my biggest issue with this is the assertion that if we ask her, she will just lie. Based on what? Based on, because she already took an oath to be a juror for this court. And just to say, well, if we ask her, she'll lie. I find that insulting on untold levels. And again, I agree with Mr. Johnson. This is the inception of this case. We're just going to look at it and go, this must be what she's doing. No.
Well, having sat through, I don't know how many trials, but a lot. I've never seen it. And it was enough that at first I didn't really pay much attention. But as time has gone by, I've seen her looking at your client, Mr. Kirkpatrick. I've looked over quick enough to see him looking right at her. I've seen her smile a number of times, and therefore, and because she is in my direct view, so I am often looking right at her while I'm listening to the witness testify. Sometimes I'm looking at the witness, sometimes I'm looking at counsel. But when I sit like this and listen to the counsel, I see her looking directly at your client. And a number of times I've seen smiles come onto her face. Not great big smiles, but more of a small smirk on her face, which is different than somebody who hears a significant act that's just occurred or hears that something, say, take a pedophile case, where they're hearing the details of what the defendant did. And you might see him go, or make some gesture as that comes out. It's enough that it's drawn my attention. I'm going to reserve judgment at this point, but I'm going to be paying close attention to it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And, Your Honor, may I state that we did hear significant testimony yesterday. We heard about girlfriend after girlfriend of Paul Bellar, and one girlfriend, he had a date, and they spent the night together. And the way I took the testimony, it was their first date. I looked at him and laughed after that testimony. That was significant.
This is at all different points in the testimony.
Yes, sir.
It's not just, otherwise I wouldn't, if it was like I said, a case where somebody grimaced or it was something came up and she just was smiling, I wouldn't pay much attention to that. This is enough that it drew my attention to where I've been watching. I'm going to reserve judgment on whether I'm going to let her kick her off or not and continue to keep my eye on what's going on. I
Thank you,
was
Your
aware of it before you even brought it to my attention.